The Spinoff Podcast Network.
Talofa lava. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spinoff. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spinoff member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by The Spinoff with help from Callaghan Innovation, New Zealand's innovation agency. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
We all know we can't simply put more animals onto land to grow the economy. The country needs clever ways to maximise the returns from dairy and other animal farming practices. One person who knows this better than most and is doing a lot more to help is today's guest, Kate Gwilliam. Kate moved from a job as project manager in Auckland to the Manawatu, making a big life change, taking on a 450-strong cattle herd. Together with her husband Tom, neither with a background in farming, they made their farm a tech-first endeavour, including full automation in the calf shed, farm sensors and computer-based reporting systems. And with this experience, Kate got involved with an automated feedstock solution, Zeddy, that uses RFID to deliver just the right amount of feed to every animal on the farm. It's award-winning tech, and with her as CEO, they have a model ready to sell to the world that they'll be sharing at field days happening the week this episode comes out. To talk the journey, what life is like on the farm, and using tech to make things better, Kate joins us now. Kia ora, good morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, so tell me first, this idea of moving from Auckland and essentially kind of an office job to the Manawatu and a 450-strong dairy farm. How does that happen?
I think now I think about it, it was very crazy at the time. But my husband and I, he's actually a born and bred Aucklander, and I'd lived in Auckland for 10 years. We met in Auckland, and one day he just came to me and he said, "I'm ready to move from Auckland. I've lived here my whole life." So it took me a while to get used to that idea because I loved Auckland. And as we were, talking about where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do, and he's a really outdoors, physical kind of guy, and he said, "I'd love to farm animals." And that was kind of, well, where do you even start when you have never farmed an animal before? So I sent him down to a family friend's farm for a little while. He went down there for a month to try it out. And he came back and he said, "I love it. I want to move. I want to do this." So we packed up our life. We sold our house. I left my job, and he sold his building business, and we went on our way down to the Manawatu. And when we looked at where we wanted to go somewhere where farming was kind of the core of the community. And I'm originally from the Manawatu. My parents live down there. So that kind of felt like a natural progression. And as we, thought about maybe having children in the future, it would be nice to be around some grandparents one day. So the Manawatu was where we ended up, and we got down there, and he worked for on the farm for a year, and then we set about trying to buy a farm with my parents. And that was interesting. We had a lot of kind of, false starts, and then we finally ended up purchasing a farm. So a year later, we owned a dairy farm, and we left the big city of Auckland for the bright lights of rural New Zealand, really. So,
Had you given yourself a trial period to go, I mean, what are the biggest changes? And I guess also, like, you know, with the dairy industry being such a big kind of force in the imagination of the country and in the economy, like, you must have had quite a few kind of preconceptions about what farming would be like and the like. Like, what was it like making that transition?
I was reasonably lucky. Like, I knew what we were getting into because I'd grown up with a lot of friends that were farmers, came from farming families. But we definitely had some preconceptions, and I think we didn't realise how much hard work it would be. I think we thought it would be a lot easier than it has been. It's very much hard graft, and my husband's a real trooper. He works so hard. But I think the biggest challenge for us was leaving behind our life in Auckland, our friends, our social life, our nice cafes, all those things, and then ending up in rural New Zealand. But that's been part of the really great things. And now that we've got a young family, I wouldn't have it any other way, that our children get to grow up on a farm and they have pet animals, and they're seeing how, you know, animals are reared and how, nature works really firsthand. And, it's a really cool experience for them.
And one of the ways that you have run the farm has been to be super tech first. Now, is that a rare thing, or is that actually just kind of the common situation on dairy farms these days?
I think we're more aggressive than the general farmer with it. When I look at dairy farming in New Zealand, I think we've got a bit of a slower uptake than maybe other countries with technology, especially if you compare automation to the UK or Europe. New Zealand is definitely a little bit slower with the uptake of automation. But how we really approached it is we really started with kind of one thing that we wanted to improve. So we saw that we had some inefficiencies. We saw that we were rearing all these animals for 4 days, all these calves, and then they were going off to the works. And I wanted to change that process. I didn't think that was a great way to be sustainable in our farming practice. I also saw these animals as an asset. So we looked at rearing all of our calves, but that was very laborious. So we thought, how can we bring in technology to help us do this job? So now we rear all our animals from our home farm, and we also operate another farm that's not too far from us, and that farm has 400 cows. So we're rearing about 800 calves, all automated on our farm. And that means that we're far more profitable because we're doing that, but also it's a better thing for the farming community. I think there's a lot of ways that farmers can add value to their farm by using technology. And that's something we've really tried to focus on, is just take one piece of technology at a time, get a handle on it, and then move to the next thing and see where we can make the next gains in our farming system. I think technology can be quite a scary thing to take on as a farmer, and especially when you talk to people who have been farming a certain way their whole life, it can be quite daunting and they don't know where to start. And I always say is choose something that you're passionate about in your business and see how technology can help you with that side of it. And then once you're comfortable with that, move on. And so we're on, I suppose, a journey on our farm where we keep adding new technology, and then some things don't work for us, and that's the reality of it. And then we'll move on to the next piece, and we'll see how we can add value that way. You know, we've got sensors. We know exactly how much milk we've got in our vat at the temperature it came in, all of those kind of things. It's given us the freedom for Tom and I to move off the farm and go away for a weekend, and originally we didn't have, and we can see what the workers are doing. We have things to tell us how much fuel we've got in our fuel tank. We have our Zeddys that feed our animals, so we know exactly how much feed they're getting. We've got our automatic calf rearing facilities. We've got irrigators and soil sensors to tell us when to turn our irrigators on. And we've got all this technology that I suppose it helps us be more efficient, and it also gives us the flexibility that we don't have to be there all the time. And I think when we first started farming, we did. And that was probably the biggest thing for us, was going from a job where we could, go away for the weekend and go skiing, to all of a sudden owning this dairy farm where we felt we were really restricted to the farm for a period of time. So, yeah, this technology has definitely given us flexibility, and that's been really exciting too.
Yeah, you go from owning a dairy farm to the dairy farm owning you, back to owning it. Yeah,
exactly.
And in terms of that story you tell about the feeding with the calves, I mean, that's one of the fascinating things about like the dairy industry, isn't it? That so many calves are reared just for the 4 or so days and then sent to the works, which seems to be, I imagine it will be quite a hard thing to do. Like, I'd find it pretty hard emotionally. I know that I'm not tough enough to be a farmer in about 100 different ways. But also, yeah, like you say, from an asset perspective, that they would grow up to be, to be cattle. They would be animals that could be used for meat, for example, and yet they're sent away as calves. Why is that? Is it like a land use thing, or is it just it's too hard to actually feed them all when they're that little?
I think it's a bit of both. All farms have their different, situations. A lot of people don't have the land for that, but also it is a very laborious process, and rearing calves is probably one of the most difficult things a farmer does. And I think you have to have a lot of patience. I did a couple of seasons of it. It's fair to say I was not made to be a calf rearer. But I think there's other ways we can look at things to add value to our farming systems, and that's what we've really tried to do, is say, hey, this is not necessarily the standard way to do it. So we rear those calves till they reach 100 kgs, and then we'll sell them onto a beef breeder who will then take them through to their basically, full weight, where they'll then get turned into meat products.
And so does automation allow that rearing to happen? Because at that time, the cows won't be able to rear them because they're being used for milk.
Yes, so we have automatic machines. So basically once the calf is 4 days old, it will go onto these machines, and it basically is just like a cow. The calves can come up to it any time. They'll just suckle on the teat and they'll feed themselves. But the really great thing is it's almost better than rearing with a cow, because we can see exactly how much weight each animal is putting on. We can see exactly when it's been feeding. So we're alerted to health issues before we'd ever see it if it was in the paddock with its mother, and things like that. So we have less deaths than we would if we reared them traditionally. And yeah, we have healthier animals, and we're also getting them to that 100 kg mark where we sell them a lot faster. So it's making us, that time that we have to rear them, it means that we're hitting our profitability marks much faster. So.
And with this background and seeing how automation can help solve those problems, tell me about the journey with Zeddy, which is the product that you're off to field days with, which is this really cool automatic feeder that can be kind of anywhere on the farm. How did you get involved in that company?
Yeah, so my parents are actually invested in quite a lot of agri-tech over the years. And my first foray into kind of agri-tech was actually when I moved down to the Manawatu, and I started working for my father in a startup that he had, and that was Levno. And at that time, it was very early on, and they do sensors and monitors. And this was a startup at that stage, so that was really exciting for me. I got to see how technology you could develop technology, I suppose, in that kind of. I've totally screwed that. I've lost my train of thought completely.
I'll come back from the beginning, so I'll come back and
yeah,
question,
thanks.
Which So you probably just want to pick up straight after. So I said, and then tell me how you got involved with Zeddy.
Yeah, so I when I first moved down to the Manawatu, I actually started working with my father, who had his own agri-tech startup. And that was my first foray into technology, I suppose. Before that, I hadn't really spent a lot of time around software developers, around embedded engineers. So I learnt a lot of, I had a massive crash course, really. And then my parents had invested in a number of agri-tech businesses, and one of them was Zeddy before it was Zeddy as we know it, and they produced in-shed feeding systems. And so my husband and I had used this product, and I'd seen it, and I thought, there's really great parts of this here, but we need to get costs down, and we need to add more functionality, and we need to kind of take what they've already developed but turn it into a product that has mass market appeal. And so that's when I got involved with Zeddy, and I sat down. I remember sitting down with the R&D team and said, "Hey guys, you've done a great job, but what about this idea? What about we take this into a field and we don't just feed calves, we feed cows, and we can feed sheep and deer and goats?" And everybody was like, "That's pretty good." So that was kind of the start of the journey with Zeddy, and that would have been late 2016 that we started on the Zeddy journey. We kind of had this a couple of months where we just massively brainstormed and researched, and then we didn't mess around really. We just got straight into prototyping the product. And I was talking the other day about this whole R&D process, and what we did wrong in the first part was we would design this prototype and we'd get it working in the workshop, and we'd go, "This is awesome, it's doing what it's meant to do," and our fake animals would come and wave their EID tags and it would dispense this feed. And then we'd take it out to the paddock and we'd go, "Why is it not working?" And we realised really early on that when you're dealing with animals, you have to be developing product in the paddock, basically. So our R&D teams pretty much spent 2 years in the paddock, going back to the workshop for, a couple of hours, tweaking something, going back to the paddock. And we did large-scale testing with Zeddy. It's really interesting development from moving from just feeding calves with our original prototype machine to then feeding cows, and now we feed other animals as well. But when you look at animals, it's not just, so our product is a piece of hardware, but then obviously we also have the data side, so the dashboard. But when you throw animal behaviour in there, it gets really interesting in the way that animals react and interact with each other, react to noises, react to things like that. It's been a massive kind of learning curve, really, for our whole team. So,
sketch a picture for us of what it actually looks like.
Yeah.
Like, what would it look like in the middle of a field, and how would animals interact with it?
So I think the first thing is it's bright purple, so you can't miss it. But it is a trailer, and it's probably the size of, it's a couple of metres long by a couple of metres high. It has a 1.2 cubic metre capacity, and there's 4 feeding bays in each side. And what happens is the animal walks up, it registers, it reads its RFID tag, and then it will dispense a predetermined amount of feed. So the farmer would have gone onto their dashboard on their phone or their laptop or however they connect, and said, right, I want all these animals to have 1 kg, I want this one to have 1.5 kgs, and I want these ones to have 2.5 kgs. Technically, they could have every animal in the herd receiving a different feed amount. And what we're trying to do, I suppose, kind of the core motivating factor for us at Zeddy is we realised that supplementary feed was being wasted in our farming system. When I looked at Tom and I's budget, our feed costs were our second largest kind of cost on our whole cash flow. And the average dairy farm in New Zealand is spending around about $150,000 a year on supplementary feed. So supplementary feed is fed, for those that don't know, on top of the grass. So it's often includes lots of minerals and supplements that animals need on top of grass to make them produce, and also especially times around calving when they need more minerals for, when they lose a lot through deficits. The average farm spending $150,000, but we saw that there was probably about 40% wastage in the system, and that was if they were feeding in shed and they had all this other kind of ways to feed. But in a traditional trough-based system, it was even a lot higher. So that was kind of what we wanted to do was feed the cows small amounts of feed multiple times a day, so there was no waste in the system. Making the customer more, I suppose, obviously profitable, but also sustainable. Like, that's a big thing. Like, I think farmers get so much slack at the moment for, the environmental impact of farming, and anything we can do to kind of fix that and help in any way is a positive thing for farming. And every farmer I know is doing the absolute best to minimise the impact of their farm on the environment. And so this was kind of a big thing for me, was to reduce waste in the farming system.
And the way it does that, so the animal walks up to the trailer, and then from its RFID tag on its ear, it then communicates with the cloud, finds out the amount that it's meant to be fed, and then it just releases a small amount into the tray, and then that animal will finish it up and then leave, and then the next animal comes and pokes its head in to see what's happening, and then its ear tag sets off the system again. So are they small enough that even if you're, I don't know, a weak member of the herd, you're not going to get bullied out by a bigger unit or something?
Yeah, so we started off by feeding only a small amount, so it's only around about 100 grams that we feed at a time, and we do that to mitigate that bullying factor. And so what it means is once an animal either reaches its full ration for the day, it will stop dispensing, or another animal's RFID is in range, it will stop dispensing. It will recognise which animal consumed what of that feed in the bowl. So the more dominant animal is only going to receive a small amount. So when we looked at this, we knew that the bullying factor was going to be a problem, and we'd seen solutions where we could have gated system, but we wanted the farmer to have flexibility to move this around. So we decided to deal with the bullying factor from a software perspective. So what we do is we recognise these animals that have this more dominant nature, and we start to basically punish them for stealing feed. So we drop their actual recipe down by the amount that they're feeding. And because they're doing all this work to receive only a small amount of feed, they actually, after a period of time, stop that behaviour because it's just not worth the effort, because all they're going to get is 50 to 100 grams of feed, and their main feed's getting punished. But the less dominant animal will come back at a time when the feed is available. And what we see with a herd is the same as, for those that don't know, the same cows always are, the first cow is always the same cow at the milking shed, and the last cow is always the same cow. And that happens around the feeder. They have very much a pecking order, and they have, the first animal will be at the feeder, then the second animal will come, and they pretty much feed at the same time every day, in the same order. So the less dominant animals might have to wait to the end, but the whole thing about Zeddy is there's always feed for them at the end, whereas previously it was a free-for-all, and the more dominant animals were consuming, so much feed. On our farm, we found out that 15% of our animals were consuming 85% of our feed budget prior to having a Zeddy. It's crazy.
That's fascinating because, cows are very complex kind of animals, and they have complex social groups, and they even hold grudges, They're quite remarkable. Yeah. And to have that kind of involvement in, seeing the psychology and the nature of how they all work together must be fascinating. That's so interesting that the dominant cows end up learning to stop being bullies.
Yeah. And I think, it's just evening out, making sure everybody gets that small amount of feed.
Tell me about the things that you've had to learn along the way, like the branding element, like the bright purple feeding troughs. I mean, that must be a real standout point. And what are the things that you've had to kind of add? And what are the things that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, so from a branding perspective, straight off the bat, I knew we wanted to be different. We were a different product. We weren't the traditional hardware product, so we wanted to really create a statement. And we sat there and we thought, we want to own a colour. And we went through all the colours of, the colour, wheel, and, that's another agri company, and we kind of came to a few colours left. And I said to my team, who were all men at the time, okay, it's between pink or purple, and they just rolled around laughing. I was like, I'm 100% serious. So I knew that I wanted Zeddy to have this kind of colour that it owned. And so we went with purple, and that's been the most successful thing I think we've done. People either hate it or they love it, and a lot of farmers come up and they go, oh, God, why did you choose purple? And I said, well, you won't never forget us, will you? And they were like, no, we won't. And our most Google, search term is actually purple feeders. So people don't even necessarily know our company name, but they search purple feeders and it comes back to us. So, we wanted to own that. And I think now we're starting to own, everybody knows that purple feeders is Zeddy. But it's been quite interesting because we're kind of a different business model as well. We're also a subscription-based business model. So that's been an interesting thing to sell to farmers. A lot of what they were doing on the farm didn't fall into that category. So there is an education process there. But, that's been quite interesting. I think the other...
And why is it subscription? Sorry, is that so you can do software updates and keep the access to the feed levels to farmers through their cell phones, through the cloud and the like?
Yeah, so where we want to go as a business, we really see ourselves as a data business, really, and I suppose Zeddy is that tool for giving us that data. And we're the only company out there collecting data on supplementary feed. And if you look at all the other data that's been collected on the farm, there's kind of this data circle, and the farmer's going to need all this data to kind of make a better decision. So we've really kind of looked at the data and we said that this is really incredibly important to us, and if we can provide this to the farmers, they're going to be able to start feeding the cows that are producing more feed, and feeding the cows less feed that aren't great producers, and all of those kind of things. So that's kind of been where we've sat with that, is kind of around that. We'll add a lot more value to that data as we grow over the next few years. So that's why we've gone with that subscription model, and firmware updates, all of those kind of things that when you've got a tech product, you've got to keep people engaged. And in terms of like the research and the development, which you talked about there, like tell me about your journeys with research and development and the Callaghan. Yeah. So Callaghan have been incredibly supportive of us. They're such a great organisation. I can't give them enough positive plugs, really. We originally got involved with them around our IP. So we went through a course with them where they looked at all of our IP and made sure we'd, kind of had what we needed to have around that. And then we've had growth grants, which have been incredibly important to us financially. But even things like I went on a tour with them earlier in the year with another 100. There was 100 of us that went over to a agri-tech conference in Australia, and just that networking. So they're really great at putting us in touch with other people. One of them will meet someone and they'll say, oh, you need to talk to Kate. There's different, synergies there. And just even helping us to promote our business. So at the field days, we're part of their tour where they take international delegates around, they're taking them around 5 automation companies, and we're one of them, and then 5 IoT companies, and we're one of them. So they've really helped us a lot in the R&D phase, but even in the commercialisation phase, they're definitely supporting us. It's been a cool journey with them.
Along the way, like, you know, when you've made these big moves, like to leave Auckland and and head to the country and farm, and you know, when you decided on the farm to then jump into running a software business, and then, you know, when you found yourself running a team of male R&D guys and changed their entire kind of way that they were doing things and put them out in the field for 2 years and told them it was going to be purple. Like, has it been easy? Have people told you that you're nuts, or, you know, what's got you through it all?
I think I am nuts, but I think it's in my DNA, so I think I didn't have a choice. I think one of my biggest things that I'd say to anybody that are looking at it, doing a business of any kind, is like, you have to have passion. You have to be incredibly passionate about it, because there's such hard days and there's great days, but it is really a roller coaster. And you have to bring that passion, and you have to motivate everybody when you're having a bad day or a bad week, or something hasn't gone as well as you expected it to. And that's just the nature of business. You know, you have things don't always pan out the way and then you have to kind of relook at everything. And the amount of times that we've gone, right, this didn't work, like, let's go back to the drawing board, whether it's R&D or, you know, just from a business perspective. So you have to be agile, I think. That's really important, is to kind of relook at things and just say, okay, we're going to pivot again, and it's going to be slightly down this way, and this is our new direction. And, yeah, you just have to have the passion to get up every day and be motivated to do it, because it isn't always easy, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I think that's the same with our move. It was like, we were passionate to make a change. Same thing, it hasn't been easy, but it's been enjoyable.
And tell me, you were mentioning that part of the future for Zeddy is to be a data business in the sense, but what about, you know, where will you be selling, and how's the operations going now, and is it going to be something all around the world, or what are the plans for Zeddy?
Yeah, so I'm really hope that you'll be travelling around the world and you'll see purple things in the paddock all over the show. So we have plans to export. At the moment, we just sell direct in New Zealand, and we've been, I suppose, turned into a commercial business this time last year at the field days, actually. So we want to ace our local market, but we definitely have plans for the European market and other parts of the world. I think there's a lot of crossovers, and the size farms that they have and the amount of supplementary feed that some of those farms feed, and also the appetite for automation really makes Zeddy a great potential for exporting. So, we see it as a company that absolutely has exporting potential, and we're really keen to see where that goes. So.
And as a final kind of thought, as someone who isn't afraid to make the jump, like, how do you define success? Like, when will you be in the place that you wouldn't jump into a completely different field, or is that success?
I think success is those little moments in time, actually, you know. It's just when everything works, and it might just be for a snippet. It might just be for, you know, a few hours. Then the reality comes crashing back. But it's just when everything kind of works out, I suppose. But it's those little things. It's when you get something to a point, like with the product. I look at it, when we got it, the biggest thing for us was getting it to a point where we could sell it, and that was a major success for us. And I think you have so many milestones along any journey, whether it's a personal or professional one, and you just have to enjoy those little milestones for what they are before, you know, it's tomorrow and you're dealing with a whole other kind of journey. Yeah, that's, for me, is just enjoying those little successes, just those little pieces of gold.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing the journey. I can't wait to see where you take it next.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
You.
Thank you, Kate Gwilliam, the CEO of Zeddy, who, if you're around field days this week, you can catch them there or check them out online. Thank you very much to Tina Tiller for producing. Thank you to Callaghan Innovation for supporting the podcast. Now over 150 episodes in. And thank you very much for listening. Cheers.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound. And brought to you by The Spinoff and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spinoff Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spinoff Podcast Network.